Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lucinda Clark, and I am the founder of the Poetry Matters Project. I am also the founder of PRA Publishing. The reason why I mention the two of those things together is that if it weren't for poetry and what we now call the Poetry Matters Project, I probably would not be a publisher today. And so what I wanted to do in the second session for Earth Day is to kind of share with you a couple of things about our organization and about Earth Day, and so that you can understand why we decided to combine the two. If you go and you do any research on Earth Day, and I did, and it said Earth Day is a name used for two similar global occurrences. While some people celebrate Earth Day around the time of the March equinox, which I didn't research that, but I'm assuming that's springtime around March 20th or 21st. Others observe the occasion on today, April 22nd of each year. Earth Day's aim is to inspire awareness of and appreciation for Earth's environment. It talks about what some of the things that people do, and you can imagine if you're working to inspire awareness and appreciation of the Earth's environment, you're probably planting seeds or doing some gardening or cleaning out a yard so that flowers can grow. You're doing all kinds of things that show appreciation for the Earth. If you understand what that concept is about, then you understand what we here at the Poetry Matters Project are trying to do by naming this project Earth Day for Poets. The Poetry Matters Project was founded, actually we received our nonprofit status from Uncle Sam at the beginning of this year. And we have to state a specific purpose in terms of what it is that we're trying to do to gain nonprofit status. And so what we wrote down was that our purpose would be to increase the awareness, interaction, and participation between emerging and seasoned poets with the public at large. And this interaction is done to enhance the importance of poetry in society. And so you say, okay, it's only a few sentences, but it has lots and lots of implications if you think about it in the broader scope of things. And so with keeping that in mind, that's why we chose Earth Day for Poets. So if you're anywhere in the world and you can open the Google link for the Hangout here, we'd like to hear from you. Because it's our first time, what we're learning to do is we're learning to set it up in half-an-hour segments. So, we don't have to get bogged down with trying to drag out the whole day. Okay, so with keeping that in mind, going back to what the Poetry Matters Project is about, we actually consist of 3 programs, and the one that we've been doing the longest, which we're actually going to celebrate our 15th year this Saturday, is the Poetry Matters Literary Prize. Now, we started that back in 2000 as it was the Poetry Month celebration. It was the Poetry Poets celebration. It was Poetry Matters celebration. And then one year, we decided that we would call it the Poetry Matters celebration. And it had been that way for a number of years. And then we decided to kind of separate it out. And so the Poetry Matters celebration is actually the event that we've been doing for 15 years. And what it entails is that we take poets, we accept entries from poets who are middle schoolers, high school, adults, and seniors. We have the 4 categories, and we accept entries from all over the world. And we judge them blind. And I'm going to give a shout out to all of the judges who have helped us over the years, because you guys are phenomenal. I know you hear me say we couldn't do what we do if you didn't do what you do, but I'm going to go ahead and say that again on camera so that you will know that we really appreciate you. And it is from that project that a lot of other things stemmed from. But getting back to the literary prize, we give out cash prizes, and when we first started, it was totally sponsored by my better half, Robert Clark, and his practice, Center for Primary Care. They literally paid out all the cash prizes for each category. But what happened was, as we started to grow, it used to just be in the, we are based here in the Augusta area. So it started out in the Richmond and Columbia County school systems. But as it grew and it went across the bridge over to Aiken, and then it started going down to Florida and out to Illinois, we looked up one year and we found that we had entries from countries all over the world: South Africa, Canada, Australia, India, just to name a few, Great Britain. And we realized that we had to actually start dividing out the categories. So we had one set of winners that were based in the CSRA, and then we did winners that were based abroad. But as things became, with all things that grow, the contest started to need help. We started to need folks to come in and help us with the anthologies that we were starting to produce. We've got one of them here. This is Poetry Diversified. We've got a couple more here, and I'll share them with you right now. We've got Poetry Matters Anthology, and actually, hopefully, as you see each title, you'll see that the cover has improved. But I think this was the first one we actually came out with officially, Poetry Matters Anthology, simple name. And then we had a great, an intern, Valerie Wooten, who came in and helped us with Power of Words. So this is our second anthology. And then I'll do them in order. Allie Fry came in and she did Poetry Diversified, which was our third title. And now we're coming out with a new release. It's called Poetry Diversified 2015. It has the same subtitle, An Anthology of Human Experience. And that one will be released next month. And so as we started to grow in this area, we started adding other programs because a lot of the participants kind of demanded it. We started doing open mics and poetry workshops, and we even tried our hand at a poetry slam last year. And so we've continued to do that. And I don't know if you heard Pauline's presentation earlier this morning. We will be doing an open mic at Catchphrase Cafe on this Friday. So we do the literary prize, we do community programming, and then we have another component which we call the community collaborations. And basically, what's involved there is that we have poets from, it used to just be locally, come and work with us when we have our National Poetry Month celebration on the 25th of every April. And this year you've heard from Pauline, so she gets the spot for community guest reader. We've had a couple of other people. We've had Jane Elkin, we've had physicians, Dr. Paul Fisher and Dr. Mac Bowman. And then we even had a school teacher who helped us tremendously with our middle school program, Christy Van Meter. And basically what the community guest reader does is they are usually not a poet by profession. They come and they share with the group how poetry has either impacted on their lives or their favorite poem or poet or poems, and then they help us to present the cash prizes to the winners at our annual event. And so that's one thing that we do. The second thing that's come about, and I mentioned it earlier, is that we established an internship program with one of the local universities. And I was just talking to somebody about this last night. It can be, you can call it GRU, which is Georgia Regents University, or it can be ASU, which is Augusta State University, or we can call it, I think it's Augusta College. I hope I got that right. So everybody put down their forks. I know that I probably missed one reference, but Augusta State University became Georgia Regents University recently, and there's still some sensitivity about it. However, having mentioned that, they have been very, very good to us. They have offered us up great interns. And so our internship program has been very strong. It's helped us to get out the anthologies and to hopefully give back to the community by grooming young people who would be interested in literary arts management. And so that's one of our collaborations. The next one is we work with Fort Gordon, and I want to give a shout out to Thomas Moss and Yadira Payne, who have allowed us to come in every poetry month. We just did our program last Monday, and we do a salute to military personnel. And what we do is we come in and we have readers from the community come in, and then we call for readers who are in the audience to come in and participate. It's just done in a way that we support and we appreciate all those who serve, and we want to give them a stage for voicing it's more so giving them a creative outlet. And so we want to make sure that we thank the folks over at Fort Gordon for that. We also do Arts in the Heart. Now we're going to give a shout out to Lisa and Lady V, who run the Troubadour stage at Arts in the Heart. It started out as a literary pavilion, and now these two ladies have turned it into one phenomenal place if you want to experience the literary arts locally and throughout the CSRA and as far away as Atlanta. They showcase poets, and they do spoken word. They even let podium poets like ourselves take the mic, and it's a great day. It takes place in September, and so if you want to find out more about that, just Google Arts in the Heart of Augusta. Last but not least, we are starting to work with the Georgia Poetry Society, and these folks are based in Atlanta, Georgia. And they are an established group of poets who basically, I think, represent or collaborate with all poetry groups here in the state of Georgia. I wanted to give a shout out to that organization because the current president, Ira Harrison, Dr. Ira Harrison, has been a judge for our program, and we have worked hand in hand with him for a number of years. And we want to congratulate him on his presidency, because I think he might be the second African-American president for that organization. And so there is the Poetry Matters Project in a nutshell. If you can just Google us at Poetry Matters Project or Poetry Matters Celebration. You can follow us on Facebook. It's pretty simple. It's www.com, Facebook/Poetry Matters Project. You can follow us on Twitter. It's Poetry Matters Georgia. So it's www.twitter.com/Poetry Matters Georgia. We have a blog. And then we have this Google Hangout. And so all of you who are viewing this and who are going to add comments or feedback, we appreciate you being here. Okay, now what we were working on is we are trying to get each segment to be at least 30 minutes. And so what I'm going to do now that I've kind of explained to you what the program is about, I would like to share with you, actually it's going to be two things. One is from one of our board members and past winners of the Poetry Matters Prize. If I can find his poem, yes, it is by poet Roger Brock. Roger has participated with Poetry Matters for a number of years. He's actually won the contest a number of times. And when we put the call out to have people submit things, or if they were interested in Earth Day, he actually sent a poem. He's still working on the technology. You'll get there, Roger, don't worry about it. But I'd like to start off the session by reading his poem titled Earth Day. Earth Day. Our planet Earth cries out. Tears flow from melting glaciers, choked on trash and litter. eyes watering from toxic smoke and smog, its skin scraped by bulldozers, burned by toxic runoff. But who hears Earth's cries? How loud do they have to be? Maybe it's not too late. However, we have to do something. Earth Day is good, but Earth Day must be every day. Our planet Earth cries out for help. This time, we must answer. Thanks, Roger. That's Roger Brock from Aiken, South Carolina. What I'd like to do next is, because I'm never asked, I'm working hard with poetry. I'd like to share with you all a poem that I wrote. It doesn't specifically involve Earth Day. Wait a minute, let me find it. Hold on, I had it here just a second ago. Here it is. But I too am a published poet. I published a book with my kids a couple of years ago. It's titled View from the Middle of the Road, Where the Greenest Grass Grows. If you look at the back, you'll see my kids are little guys. They are both college graduates now, full-blown adults, and I'm very proud of them. But what I'd like to do is to share with you a poem that I wrote from this book, which is probably maybe 10 years old. But one thing that we did do with this is we made it into a series. And so this would be actually book one of a four-part series. And we're looking to do series 5 again, if we can ever get around from, or get away from everything that's involved in setting up a new organization. The title of this poem that I'm going to read is called The Truth About Being the First. Now, I'm reading this not just because it's Earth Day, but because this is our first session with trying this Hangout. And I've learned a lot about, trying things for the first time. And I thought this poem would be appropriate. The truth about being the first. I am the first to attempt to cross the Great Barrier, to survive the crossing, to hold my head and hands high in victory. I am the only one who represents the many, who is a credit to her gender and race. It is a silent, hollow victory, a victory that is never spoken aloud or in mixed company. In some people's minds, it is a fluke, an anomaly, an abomination. All I know is I am alone. Okay, that's from View from the Middle of the Road. We're going to go to a little bit of a lighter fare. We're going to read from one or two, or we'll read one each from each of the different anthologies that we've published, and hopefully one of the winners, either Kendall or Derek or I'm trying to think of one of the other winners, could be read from Roger Jones. Someone will sign in, and they can share what they've written. But right now, I'll take one from our first book, and let me see real quick. Let me see what we got here. Got a couple of them marked. Let's see. Okay, what we'll do is we'll read from the high school section, and this one was done by Rachel Loma. Now, I happen to know, because I follow Rachel on Facebook, is that when she did this, she was in high school in 2009. She is now, I think, getting ready to start her first year in vet school. So congratulations to Rachel, and I'm going to read your poem called I Wish. Sometimes I wish my life was a musical, breaking out into random song, breaking out into random dancing. Sometimes I wish my life was a TV show, knowing every line, knowing every phrase. Sometimes I wish my life was a comedy, laughing at things that don't make sense, laughing at jokes that aren't funny. Sometimes I wish my life was a movie, being able to call cut if I messed up, being able to redo all my mistakes. Sometimes I wish my life was a basketball game, strategizing every move, strategizing every play. Sometimes I wish my life was what it is now. I can break out into random song. So what if I get funny looks? I can't know every line, but I know some of them my own. So what if I don't know how they're going to react? I can laugh at things that don't make sense. So what if people think I'm stupid? I can't yell cut if I mess up, but I can apologize. So what if people think I'm shallow? I can strategize my moves. I can think before I act. So what if I take a second before I speak? And you know what? At the end of the day, when I'm lying in bed, thinking about all the mistakes I made, all the things I've done wrong, I realize I like my life the way it is. So what about all those what ifs? And that's Rachel Loman from the Poetry Anthology. Okay, we're coming down to the last minutes of this session, but what I want to do is I got to share, because once we started having the interns, I used to have a funny section of the reading when we finally launched the book, where I had the interns read. Or they put the book together, and I said, part of your job, so that 10 years from now, when you look back on your life as an intern, or you're checking into things that you've done, you'll be able to read this introduction and think about what your thoughts were when you had to put this book together. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to close with reading the introductions from our first title, Power of Words, that was written by my first intern, Valerie Wooten, who's actually doing really well. She's moved on, and she works with a local company here in Augusta. And then I'm going to do one. I'll close out with Allie Fry, who was the intern for Poetry Diversified. It starts here, Valerie. The writing of this introduction was no easy task. You would think it would be. Talk about the experience you had in putting this anthology together, my publisher tells me enthusiastically. I was excited at first. I reread the poems and began writing this tale of traveling through mountains and forests, and of words and experiences. I dressed up metaphors and practiced clever uses of alliterations, blah, 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 blah. It just didn't fit. I switched gears and started writing about the process it took in putting together a book from beginning to end. But I added too many details, and the task seemed so daunting written down that I knew I would lose the reader. Truth is, I've gone through many things personally in conjunction with putting this book together, which contributed to the loss of the perfect intro. September, I was a bridesmaid and part of a wedding planner for my best friend's wedding. That same night, she revealed to me she had cancer. The first week of October, my uncle called all the family together from out of town because his lung cancer was progressing rapidly. A week later, my 4-year-old had an asthma attack when he'd never had a respiratory problem before. He had spent the night in the hospital. My uncle passed October 18th. I was a wreck. It wasn't until I had a quick moment of stillness and silence that the words flowed onto the computer screen. I've had a love-hate relationship with poetry for as long as I can remember. The thing I love about poetry is how emotionally deep you can take a poem. You are allowed to dive deep within yourself and pull out emotions and thoughts that you had never uttered before, without feeling ashamed or having to explain yourself. Poetry allows you to be free. Sometimes a period behind a sentence is too much, and poetry says it's okay that you don't use it. Sometimes you don't feel linear lining every sentence behind the other one with all lines left aligned on the paper. Sometimes your feelings are jarred and erratic, and the words need to be right aligned or bigger than the word next to it. Poetry gives the poet this outlet to do as he or she pleases, and it's okay. Another love I have for poetry is how it transcends age and time. People from all walks of life can relate. It is a universal language. Just as in this anthology, there are poems from middle school students and to senior adults. It is hard to tell the difference. That is poetry, the ability to speak to the heart and not the head. My hate for poetry is how abstract it can be. Instead of simply stating the message, poets often tuck and roll it into flowery language and metaphors that force me to think and find a connection with. Just tell me what you want me to know. I don't want to ponder the meaning. This anthology is one to be devoured, though. You have your abstract poems that force you to go deeper than the surface layer, and then there are poems that directly tell you the meaning. That's what I love about this book. It's not about the hours of deciding which font to use or trying to figure out a front cover that's appealing to the eye, but it is the words inside of the book. Yes, those things are important, but it is the voice of each poet that speaks to the reader's heart. As you read this, it is the stories of those young and old that collectively come together to bask in the sunlight of your mind. And it is the possibility to change lives one poem at a time. That is the beauty of poetry. Valerie Wooten, Augusta State University. Thanks, Val. And so, with the time remaining, I need to scoot up here. I see now I'm going to read Ali Fry's introduction. And so this one is from Poetry Diversified. As badly as I wanted to fill this introduction with gleaming adjectives and entertaining wit, I must refrain. This anthology is not about the language in the introduction. It's about the readers and the poets themselves. It's about humanity as a whole and the beauty of experiences poetically and humbly expressed. At the beginning of this process, I was presented with a stack of poems and asked to sort them. I had no idea where to begin and quickly made the foolish assumption that a two-worded demand would require very little effort on my part. But as I began to read, every word spoke to me and touched me in a million different ways. It took no time at all for the theme of this anthology to dawn on me: diversity. Those writers represent variations in age, race, gender, religion, and every type of social category, and in turn, their diverse experiences represent that. Suddenly, I knew I had to do the writing justice and order the poems in a poetic way. I allowed the phrases, metaphors, and experiences to guide my hands as I organized the poems into chapters according to the experiences they represented. At first, I found my plan to be ingenious and felt as if I was giving the poems worthy beds in which to lie. Unfortunately and ironically, I ended up realizing that 23 different experiences do not house enough similarities to be grouped into a mere 4 or 5 separate categories. I didn't understand that I needed to think a bit less like a writer and more like an intern. And I definitely shouldn't have attempted to make art out of art instead of giving the art a frame. After surviving that part of my experience, there are still millions of technical decisions to be made. The font on the front of this anthology, the font on the back, the font in between, the sizes of all of this font, the copyright page, the positioning of the poem's names, the type of paper used, etc. And this is but a fraction of what has to be thought about. With all these technical questions whirling around in my head, it was hard to see through it as to the finished product. But here it is, art framed with details formed by an intern. Poetry Diversified is filled with language, bearing the souls of 23 poets with 23 different stories to tell. My greatest wish for you while perusing this anthology is that you are able to read these diverse human experiences and soak in the sorrow, guilt, discovery, hope, and joy that I consume while dividing them into the greatest opportunities, constructing a masterpiece that was already a masterpiece. Enjoy. And that was by intern Allie Fry. And it is with that that I, Lucinda Clark, will close this session of Earth Day for Poets. Join us, drop us a line if you get a chance. We'd love to hear from you. Bye.